afternoon if you are tuning in on the day that we record, on the day we drop, or just hello, good day to anyone tuning in at any point in time here. I am Jamie Steyer Johnson alongside Coach Helen Williams here on the Her Hoop Stats podcast. It is July 3rd. It is about 2 in the afternoon Central. Make your preferred conversions anywhere else. So we've gotten through a good portion of the day, so maybe we have mitigated the impact of any breaking news directly after we finish recording. Although I say that we'll have something. That's pretty much a guarantee. Anytime we finish recording a pod, we're gonna get big news after. So have fun with whatever that is, folks. But today, considering the day off for the WNBA yesterday, given the kind of break they gave for the Commissioner's Cup, there are no games to talk about from last night. So we're going to get into some of the roster moves that we've seen. It's been a little bit over the past week or two, especially with Eurobasket and, of course, some injuries pervasive through the league, always going to be. That's kind of the nature of sport. But this past week, it seems like it's picked up pretty significantly, including some people coming back from injury, which is always good to see. So, Coach, you want to start with the Sparks, because I feel like that is kind of the top headline, perhaps, given the players that were waived recently, where they had to release Shea Petty due to her being on a hardship deal, and Ray Burrell came back from injury. But then they also waived Odyssey Sims, and there was mixed reactions to this, mostly pretty surprised, I think people were. But when you look at the returns that they had in Julie Alamon returning from Eurobasket and then Ray Burrell coming back from injury, and then you factor in that Odyssey had been gone for some games due to personal matters, had returned, but you never know what exactly that entails. And so you just figure they're prioritizing the players that they feel really confident are going to be available going forward. Obviously, Odyssey started out really, really strong for them. The kind of player you would like to keep around if possible, but I think that they have a really, really great future there with this season, with Julie Alamon returning and Ray Burrell coming back as well.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised with Odyssey Sims as well, because I thought she gave him a lot on both ends of the floor. She can play with pace, she can defend, decent three-point shooter as well. And so I'm thinking, why, we're not privy to what the organization is privy to, but I'm just looking at the roster and I'm thinking, was it redundant to have another three-point shooter, a guard, the 5'8" guard that's left-handed? I mean, you've got Kelsey Plum, and I'm thinking, did you just want to get bigger on the perimeter for defensive purposes? We don't know, but I was just really surprised because I thought she played well for them.
Yeah, I do think that that's the thing, is it's, again, someone that if you have the roster spots, you're going to keep around. And so I think that it speaks to the confidence that they have in both Julie Alamon and Ray Burrell coming back, where, okay, Ray, you've been hurt, but we know what you're capable of doing. And Julie, you've been playing basketball this whole time, right? So they're ready for her to step right back into it. And I think your point on height is a really good one as well, because for all of the things that Odyssey does really, really well, and all the things she does bring to the court, height is not necessarily one of them. And so when you have Kelsey Plum, who's going to be kind of the focal point of your offense, at least on the perimeter, that is certainly something that you have to consider in a league that has a good bit of height across the board. You're seeing a lot of forwards and wings being really consistently highlighted. And so that really does seem like it could have been a consideration. I would not be at all surprised to see Odyssey popping up somewhere else sooner rather than later. Again, just depending on what she's dealing with in her personal life. She's someone who has been, as I talked about prior to the season, kind of that mercenary in the
Mhm.
WNBA
Yeah.
where she bounces around and has played and contributed in a lot of different places. And so, with her being available now, whenever what she's dealing with resolves, I would anticipate her being a top target for a lot of these teams that are trying to bring on maybe some leadership, maybe some depth, some experience. You know, when you talk
Pace.
about a team,
Yeah.
yes,
Some pace.
exactly.
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
talk about like Chicago, where everyone's been saying, hey, you know, are you going to make any moves? Are you going to be bringing in any additional point guards with Sloot being out for the season? And there's been a lot of names thrown around as far as that's concerned. And I really think that Odyssey is going to be right in there as well. So we know, obviously, contracts, short term, long term hardship, 7 day, whatever. It's a whole thing. So who knows when Chicago will be looking to make moves, but if and when they do, that's definitely someone that's going to be in the mix there, as well as for several other teams. Really.
Yeah. I mean, her situation reminds me of Ari McDonald at Indiana. I
Mhm.
mean, came right in, great defender, great with pace on offense. And your point about Chicago actually is good. If I'm a post player, I want somebody on that team that I know has experience that's going to get me the ball. I know they have, Haley Van Lith, but you need experience at that position, especially at this time of the year when you're trying to get into that playoff spot. As time, we've had a decent amount of time now to see what teams are made of, but by the same token, you're looking at these teams and they all have started the year with an identity and planned for Eurobasket to keep a certain identity, but then also you factor in injuries. And so some teams are still trying to figure things out because of the injuries, no matter how well you planned. And so a team like Chicago is just trying to figure it out, just like everybody else.
Absolutely. And there's another player that started getting thrown around in regards to Chicago who was recently released, and that's Julie Von Lowe, who, you know, the Valkyries obviously had a whole bunch of players overseas, had a lot of players in Eurobasket, brought back a couple people they had during training camp that ended up being some of the last cuts, notably Leticia Mihir and Caitlin Chen. And those two have contributed in really, really incredible ways while that group of players was overseas. And so Julie Von Lowe had a little bit of a tough start to the season, just wasn't super efficient from the floor, didn't have that consistency I shouldn't say consistency because she was a little bit up and down in Washington as well, but she just wasn't giving what they needed, to put it simply. And so then when you have, I think Caitlin Chen was the one that was the question mark when she signed that hardship contract or came back with all those other players going overseas. And once she got those minutes, she was ready to go. I was extremely impressed. I felt confident that Ami here would contribute, but Chen was a little bit of a surprise for me and the way that she was able to go about her business. And I think that that speaks really highly to the focus and the identity that the Valkyries do have, because you talk about a lot of these teams kind of losing their identity. One of the teams that has not lost their identity is the team that has had maybe the most players gone for a chunk of the season, which I think is incredible. So I know that I've seen Julie thrown around out there as someone that maybe the Sky would be interested in. She's definitely someone that teams are going to give a look, but the Valkyries, man, I mean, not a whole lot of changes now since they did make that cut. They will be, it looks like, keeping Caitlin Chen and Leticia Mihir, and then getting back Carla Late here, hopefully pretty soon. I think with the injury that she's been rehabbing from Janelle Salon, so they're getting back a lot of players that were playing well for them, but then getting to keep a couple sort of new key pieces because everyone's key when you have so much balance. Everyone really is kind of on equal footing.
Yeah, I've always been a Caitlyn Chin fan ever since I, did her games when she was at Princeton.
Mhm.
I thought she was underrated. People think, oh, it's Ivy League, and yeah, she can do that. But the thing about her though, and you compare her and Julie Van Lewis, I think defensive identity of Golden State, she fits a little bit better, bigger, stronger type
Mhm.
player, and so I didn't think she should have been cut in the beginning. I didn't think Amy here should have been cut in the beginning, but of course, I don't work for Golden State. It's just my opinion. But I do think it's smart to keep both of them. Unfortunately for Van Loo, just in terms of the way she found out about it, which was interesting. Somebody will pick her up, but when you watch her, to me, if I'm a coach, the inconsistency would really, give me some concern if I
Mhm.
needed to depend on her. Now, if she's coming in and she's a role player, totally different story, right? Come in, you might heat up, you might not. We'll take that chance. But in terms of somebody that you need on the floor all the time, the consistency, I'm not surprised that they kept Chen instead of her.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and
that's
that's
a
a
really good
really good
point
point.
as well, as far as needing to rely on her and having that pause. I do think that that makes her a prime candidate for when we come back from the All-Star break, when you start having these 7-day contracts
Right.
where you can come in and then it's not really as much of a consideration. Like, you can treat it as truly we are planning on keeping you for only these 7 days, and that if it works out, you can keep them on, but it's designed a lot more to be able to rotate people through, and so I do think that she's someone that has enough upside that people will be interested, but yeah, that inconsistency will have a little bit of that level of concern, and so would certainly not be surprised to see a little bit of a break here and then having her potentially picked up by someone after the All-Star break. And yeah, definitely tough with the way that she departed from the Valkyries, but it's the
It's a
business.
business,
It's
right?
tough. It's
It's a
tough. Yeah.
business, and players know, coaches know. This is one of the things we don't think about, we don't talk about, but we're all expendable.
Hmm.
So it's what have you done for me lately? And decisions are being made, and sometimes we on the outside don't understand the rhyme or reason, but whoever's making those decisions, they do have a solid reason for doing it.
Hmm. Absolutely. And then the one other player that I am kind of interested to see that has recently departed from the Valkyries that I feel like might be getting some looks is Chloe Bibby. And she brings that kind of height to the floor while also bringing pretty solid 3-point shooting. I mean, frankly, shot better from three than she did from two in her 5 games with Golden State, but shot 42% from three, has, again, the length, is able to defend pretty well, averaged nearly a block per game. And so some of these teams that are struggling with depth pretty significantly, there's somewhere it's very much on the perimeter, there's somewhere it's very much on the interior. There's some that are just struggling with depth, period. But there's
Yeah.
definitely a couple teams that I think are going to be interested in someone with the ability to stretch the floor that Chloe Bibby has. And so just another one of those where there's becoming an even longer list of players that are out there. As we well know, there's more players that are very capable of playing in the WNBA than there are roster spots. And so as the season goes on and you see people perform in season, and then just because of the nature of rosters, they end up getting cut, you're like, okay, well, someone's going to pick them up. Like these hardship contracts, these 7-day deals, like someone's going to pick them up. And it gets really interesting to see where some of these players land.
Yeah, it's a mentality too. If you're one of those players, like how do you stay prepared and stay ready? You have to have a really high basketball IQ
Hmm.
if you're one of these players, because you come in and it's a totally different system. You have to figure out really quickly where you fit in. So it is interesting to see these players and where they end up.
And to that point, players that are staying really ready, Leah Tu King. First of
I
all,
love her. Let me just say, I love her. Go ahead, but I just have to say
yes. No, I'm 100% with you. I think that she is so fun to watch. I think that her versatility, even with being a little bit undersized, is really impressive. I think that you talk about like high basketball IQ, going in and just doing the little things. There's a reason why she was so valuable and started playing decent minutes for LA. And she's another one that I think if they could have kept her, they
Yeah,
really would have liked to potentially. But again, just the nature of the hardship contract is what it is. And so then I like personally, I know that when I saw Leah Two King signs with the Wings, I was like, I totally missed her hardship contract even being terminated because,
yeah.
this week has been so all over the place without a lot of games for a little stretch there. So all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I need to get back on top of all this. And then I'm going through the wild, wild injury report from the Wings. They are going to be uh, thin on the bench at
That's
the
really
very
lovely.
least.
Yeah, here's the thing about Leah Two King. She is, you talk about her versatility. She has been able to be the woman. When she was at Pittsburgh, she was the woman.
Mhm.
And I think people forget that she can score, that she has offensive skills. Just of late, you didn't see them much because she was at Notre Dame and they didn't need them. But she's a very good offensive player. And even though she's only 6 feet, she's tough. She plays bigger than 6 feet, and she is relentless on the boards. And some of that you just can't teach. That's just who she is as a person. And so because of that relentlessness, she creates opportunities not just for herself, but for her teammates with extra possessions and pretty good defender in the post, even though she's only 6 feet.
Yeah, that's I think a big thing too where okay, she's a little bit undersized, but when you have the ability to play bigger than that, not just offensively, but defensively because that is very tough to have the strength, to have the length, to have the positioning. That's again, that's game knowledge, that's IQ to have the positioning to defend undersized inside. That just gives you so much more opportunity to play with your lineups and for Dallas, there's not a whole lot of lineup to play with when you're going to be missing Dejanay Carrington, potentially Maisha Hines Allen, potentially, or I believe Arike Gumbawale. Like we saw a lineup from practice that was posted online that included uh, Louisa Geiselsuter, Lee Uru, and Tara McCowan on the floor at the same time, which I said 2025 wings meet 2024 wings because that was the MO for the past like 2 years of just having all the height in the world and not a whole lot on the perimeter. But someone like Leah 2 will be a boost. I don't know how much considering everything else and considering what they've had up to this point. I don't know that she's a difference maker in wins and losses in this particular situation, but she's going to make you better.
Yeah, and again, the biggest thing for me is she's going to give your team more opportunities on offense because she's such a tremendous rebounder, and they need more shots because they need to score more than the other team, and they haven't been all that efficient with certain lineups. And so, if
Mhm.
you can create more offense from your defense, offensive transition, it makes it a little bit easier to score. And you don't have to spend so much time trying to get when you have both of those post players in at the same time, trying to get them in the right position because you only have a few seconds on the clock, and you've got maybe 10 or 12 of that trying to get both of them in position to figure out to get what you want. So I think she's very valuable to the Dallas Wings and hope she sticks.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. I mean, she's someone who along with many others, it certainly deserves to be on a roster. And so I think that that would be really fun to be able to see her continue to develop in Dallas. Also on the injury report that I didn't even remember to mention is Maddie Segrist, who's been out for a while, doesn't really have a
Yeah,
timetable on
that's a
return.
big
So
one for them. That's a big one
that's,
for them.
yeah, another player that's just got that length, that versatility, can bring a lot of different things, can play several different positions. So definitely been some tough breaks for Dallas. And part of their depth issues are that they've recently traded away a player that has been playing that is not on the injury report, and that's Nalissa Smith. And so Nalissa to the Aces, I think, was a little bit surprising for a lot of people just because it wasn't really on the radar. in general, not really something that was being talked about. I personally like the Aces going after some interior help. I know I saw discussion of, well, they need a true center, or, they need this, they need that. And there's there's kind of this notion that I think people want Asia Wilson to more consistently play the four. But for me, the issue is not Asia playing the center or playing the five position. The issue is having essentially no contribution from anyone else on the team at either the four or the five, having her be pretty much the only front court player contributing. And so if she's continuing to play the five and you're going to have some minutes from Nalissa Smith playing the four, and she can give you, frankly, anything, that to me is at least a step in the right direction. It's at least trying something different as opposed to what we've seen from the Aces in the past couple years with this same exact issue, which is kind of just, well, is what it is. We tried to get Candace and she got hurt, and then we got Cheyenne Parker Tyus, and then she's out for pregnancy. And so they've tried, but then they haven't really had that backup plan. They haven't gone to a plan B very much. And so I'm glad to see them at least giving it a shot here earlier in the season.
Well, two things to that point. One is, and everybody's piling on Kia Stokes, and I don't want to seem like I'm piling on her because she has a certain skill set, and depending on where she ends up, her skill set is useful. However, having said that, when you play her, when she's on the floor, she's one dimensional, obviously for defense. And when they're on offense with her on the floor, you're essentially playing five defenders against four offensive players, which makes it difficult for Vegas because every time a person touches the ball, they've got 1.5 people on them. Right. And so I think that's part of the problem what Vegas had to in their half court offense is playing 5 against 4. So Nalissa Smith, at least like you said, anything on offense just to get people to pay attention to her. And she can score. I think people forget about that. She can score. So I think what really riled people up is that they got they gave up a first round pick for her. And you're looking at that and I'm thinking 80% of the league they're going to be free agents next year. So they can build and make whatever changes they need to make through free agency. But I went back and I looked. Is a first round pick really all that important? Because I went back and I looked at second round picks of people and of the last few years to see who has impact. So in 2021, Natasha Mack, you see what she's doing right now with Phoenix. You look at Naz Hillman from Atlanta, what she's doing. Olivia Nelson-Adota is one of the only offensive go-to players that Connecticut has. Obviously, Kate Martin went to Vegas, and Dejanay Carrington, second round. So you can find good players in the second round. You don't necessarily need the first round. Now, obviously, I want a first round if I can get Juju Watkins, right? I mean, let's be honest here. But the really good teams who commit to scouting and they have a budget and they have a staff. We're really looking at all of these players who aren't the, top names per se. And then obviously overseas like that, you could get a lot of good players in that second round. So I think people get hung up on that. Oh my God, she's not worth a first round pick. But who's coming out in 2027? We don't know that right now, right? Now, obviously there's some good players, but I'm just saying that you can build your roster through free agency and find good players in the second round. So I think people just, instead of X's and O's, they got caught up on, oh my God, first round pick.
Yeah. And I think that for me, the biggest thing with this move for Vegas is that I talk a lot about teams being in like win now mode where maybe some people should be more focused on building for the future, whatever. For Vegas, it's almost beyond win now. To me, it feels like kind of do or die because when you've had the kind of talent that you've had last year and this year, and then last year you don't perform as well as you wanted to, you still, make it into the playoffs, you still have a decent showing there, but you had some kind of tough stretches. And then this year, the way that things have started out for the Aces. I think that there has to be some really significant concerns of, okay, if we don't turn this around, if we can't utilize Asia Wilson, Chelsea Gray, Jackie Young, Jewel Lloyd, like you
It's a
go
good
down the list
floor. It's
of
a
what
good
they do
floor.
have. If you underperform to the point that they have so far this year for the entirety of the season, even as much as we know, Asia Wilson has said she wants to stay with Vegas, that is where she wants to be. And I think that there's a lot of players who probably would like to stay there. There's plenty of players who would like to go there. But if you underperform to the level that we've seen at times over the course of the season with what they have now, I think there's going to be some really big red flags for their current players and for potential free agents. And so it's one of those where you say, well, yeah, down the road, we'd love to have a good draft pick. But if we don't right the ship now, it's not going to matter. And so that's where you say, okay, Melissa Smith, you're someone who's like ready to plug in and who's going to, I think, really thrive alongside Asia Wilson, being able to learn from her. There's obviously a clip that many people have seen of Asia like literally coaching her up during a
Yeah.
game, which is really, like, I think one of the best indicators of the kind of person, player, leader Asia Wilson is, that's what she's doing to opponents during a game. Like, that's kind of incredible. But I'm very intrigued to see what Melissa can do, how she can develop with a very different sort of group around her than she's had so far in her career. And
I think she'll be great at cleaning things up.
mhm,
Rebounding, offensive rebounding, defense. I think Vegas they haven't done a very good job with their bench. Now they did get we talked about second round, the Nye kid, right? I think he was
yes,
number 13, I think.
yeah,
A great example of value in the second round, but they just have not been able to put together a bench that is going to give the starting five they had, some relief. I do think they missed Kelsey Plum.
mhm,
I understand she wanted to go off and do her own thing. She's doing great, having a great season. LA's doing, well, but they got away with it for the 2 years, the championships that they've won, and it's starting to catch up with them. And you want to be a place where people want to go, right? In terms of free agency next year. So you're talking about immediate do or die. Like you have to make this organization appealing to people who want to go. Now, it's appealing to me if they're going to give me an extra $100,000 to the city of Las Vegas. That's going to appeal to me. But on the court, like, do we have an opportunity? And their bench has never been strong.
yeah. It's something that I think will be a big priority going forward for them. In season you can only do what you can do. But it's gotta, at some point the switch has to flip there. So I'll be really
Yeah,
intrigued to see what we get. And then especially I will be really intrigued to see how Nalissa slots in there. We'll be able to start seeing some of these players tonight, because we've got a full slate after having a couple of days with just the one game from the Commissioner's Cup. Now just about everyone's back in action. So,
I think
any
time.
team or player you're specifically looking forward to seeing here, now that we're finally getting some games again?
Not a specific team. I just want to see the reset for
Mhm.
for teams, right? Because we're about how many weeks are we in right now that we've had? It escapes me
So,
in the
m
season.
month and a half.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do for you look at these trades and they're all part of the reset. So I'll be evaluating teams differently now that they've made a trade or that people have come back from, Eurobasket and some that are coming back from injury. This is the beginning of what your identity is going to be for the rest of the season. So not a team in particular, but looking at
Mhm.
how teams reset.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, coach, thank you so much for coming on. Always having, I love all of your insights, but especially the second round draft picks. When you brought that up before we started recording, I was like, you know what? I haven't seen people talking about that. That is an awesome point. So, certainly plenty of considerations to be made with these trades, with these roster moves. And I'm excited to see these things start flushing themselves out, seeing how these teams are performing with, some players back, some additions. There'll be certainly a lot to follow. That's for sure, just by nature when you have 5 games in a night, but in general with all the changes. So thank you so much for, as always, your insight joining me today. Folks, you can find Coach Williams online at Coach4, the number 4, the coach. And she will be not engaging all that much, as we were discussing before we started recording. She's not going to be one of those back and forth kind of people, but she's going to make sure that you get our content there, and has some of her own work that she posts there, which is always super awesome to see. You can follow me. I'm at JSteyz, JSTEYZ, on any platform that you're looking for me on. And of course, make sure that you're following Her Hoop Stats at Her Hoop Stats, again, on pretty much every platform: Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, X. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening or watching right now. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, whatever that may be, and subscribe to our site as well. We have newsletters that are sent out pretty close to daily, so you will get about as much women's basketball as you could possibly want from us. So thank you so much for tuning in, for listening today, and we will be back at you tomorrow, Friday, and then as always, every weekday. Thanks, folks.